Chapter 21. Adapting. Everyone was stunned as they witnessed the Akatsuki spy wiggle in his current form at the rockside. He looked around silently as he tried to register the situation. A grin spread across his face as he witnessed a woman in the room. It wasn't just any woman though. It was Konan of the Akatsuki, or more accurately, Konan the former Akatsuki. He looked at her attire and glanced up and down at her. She looked a lot different than she did before. Her hair was slightly shorter on one side, and she now wore Konoha shinobi gear. A green vest with a black long-sleeve shirt that had a red swirl on each arm. He also saw her black pants with her holster on her right hip. When he looked up again, he noticed her leaf headband that reflected poorly in the dim light of the reflected water, but he could definitely see the leaf symbol etched in the middle of the chrome plate. These things weren't the things that intrigued him the most, but rather her facial reaction to him. She looked unpleased. "What's the matter, Konan? Not going to at least say hello? I mean, we all work together after all." The woman in question looked down at the man with a flat expression, but the look in her eyes showed all of her distaste in the current events unfolding before her. "I've done away with that organization. We are not partners any longer. If anything, you are only getting in the way." Kisam's grin grew wider as he wiggled a little more and molded from Samehada. His body oozed from the innards of the sword and he fell into the water with a small splash. Coming up to the surface, he spoke, feigning injury. "That hurts. And here I was expecting you to say this was all a trick, but you actually became a traitor to us." "The Akatsuki has lost its original intention," Konan replied stoically. "Nagato and Yuhiko wanted to bring peace to this world the right way. Madara turned it into a disaster and drug everyone down with him. I was only lucky enough to escape that catastrophe." Her eyes narrowed in sadness slightly as she spoke. When Nagato passed, he realized the original view of Akatsuki and saved himself and others that he killed during his invasion upon the Leaf Village. He knew what he did wrong. Of course, it goes without saying that they acted of their own will. The shark man grunted as he looked around. His gaze shifted towards the water as his sword swam to Killer Bee and looked at an opening. He knew that he only had one chance to gain chakra, to build his form back, but when he looked at Konan, he was unsure of his timing. "Shit. With Konan here, I don't know if I'll be able to reach Samehada in time. I never expected her to be here. It seems even with your male bravado, you're surprised to see me. Did Madara not fill you in?" That got the shark thinking quietly. It was true. Madara hadn't said anything about Konan being there. From the way things looked, it seemed like she had been with the Konoha shinobi for a while now. This was throwing a wrench into his plans, and he could only stall as he sat there. "I wonder why he would do something like that?" Konan responded while looking down at the man. "One would assume that he would let all of his pawns know of rather interesting intel such as my joining with Konoha. It seems the Akatsuki is a shell of its former self. What does it matter to you?" Kisum snorted in annoyance. "You're not a part of us any longer, so honestly, it's none of your business." "Good. Just a little more. Hey guys, did you see where the enemy went?" Everyone's eyes diverted towards the orange-haired boy coming through the water with an awkward limp. "Now's my chance." Kisum darted underwater towards Samehada, who was still leaning against B. While Kisum was still underwater, he grabbed the hilt and felt chakra immediately swarm into his body. The energy was bringing him to life again, but that was until he felt something sticking to his skin. His eyes widened as he saw paper attaching to his body. "These are..." Kaboom! The waterfall erupted into an explosion as Kisum flew from the miniature lake. His skin was charred on his legs and arms, and he could feel the burn tingling through his body. His chakra hadn't recovered entirely, but he had enough to be able to narrowly dodge that attack that was too close for comfort. Everyone watched as Konan's paper jutsu fluttered restlessly in the air. Her paper peeled against her skin and was filling the air with more of the white rectangles. "You thought that I wouldn't notice, didn't you? I know you well, Kisum." Kisum cursed silently to himself as he stood on the surface of the water. He hadn't expected Konan to be as alert. That was a mistake that he regretted and promised that he would never make again. He looked at his opponents and noticed everyone getting into stance to fight against the man. He only needed to be there for information regarding the Jinchuriki and their locations, but he didn't expect the orange brat to rat him out so soon. If only he had a little more time. His sight went to his sword Samehada. He could tell that the sword wasn't wanting to be with him any longer, and since B was guarding the sword, there was no other way to retrieve it. With so many opposing him, and his only means of protection and strength taken away from him, he had to react quickly. "Kisum." The man looked over to the woman that attacked him before. Her face looked questionable, and she seemed to be uncertain about something. "I just have one question." That garnered everyone's interest as they all looked at the confrontation between the Akatsuki and ex-Akatsuki members. Mostly with interest, but also with curiosity. "Spit it out. What do you get out of all of this?" That question came straight from the left field. What was Conan's goal with that? He couldn't really put a finger on it, but he felt that she was at least being genuine, if his years of experience told anything about him. He supposed that he could at least give her an answer before he left. Well, I suppose I can tell you since it won't really matter anyway. A grin appeared briefly before a sad contemplative aura took him over. I just want a world not filled with lies. His eyes never left hers as he continued to speak. Even you should know how dangerous this world really is. Life here is pointless when all we do is lie to each other and kill each other. If I could live in a world without lies, then I can truly be happy, because then I would never have to worry about any of this ever again. Conan thought contemplatively at his revealing of desires. Of course, she could relate. Her whole life had been nothing but despair. Nowadays, she didn't worry about these things as much, since she met Naruto, but it's not like it didn't pop into her mind every so often. It was a part of her life after all. Even though she moved past those years, she still thought about them from time to time. Hey, Conan, Naruto spoke out, do you know this guy? Conan didn't really pay Naruto any mind as she kept eye lock at the shark man. She felt a mutual understanding. He was following Madara's plan, because he wanted a certain type of peace. Just like Madara, he wanted to create something that would change the world, just so the world would become something different than what was ultimately reality. In a way, Conan spoke, I've only met him a few times, but I do believe that you've met him before as well. Naruto thought back momentarily, and recognition immediately ran to his face to the time where Sasuke met Itachi and his partner, which was none other than the shark man himself. That's right. That was the man that was with Itachi, that was looking for Sasuke. Conan nodded curtly as she kept her focus on the fish man. It was clear that with current situations, he wasn't going to get out alive, and she thought that she could perhaps bargain with him. I wonder how long until you'll realize it. Kisum looked at the woman slightly curious. Realize what? That you're only a puppet to Madara. He's not doing this for you. He's doing everything for himself. Honestly, I am surprised and saddened that someone as smart as you are can fail to see the obvious trickery that has been played before your eyes. The fish man thought silently as he looked at the events that played before him. This woman is starting to bug me. Even I can see that she is the one that's being used. Why do you persist in this good guy bad guy nonsense? Because sometimes, Conan said as the papers ruffled toward the shark, life is what you make it. Conan shot her papers towards Kisum like sharp needles. Needless to say, Kisum jumped up and shot through several hand seals before water erupted beneath him. The giant water serpent speared toward Conan as she flew to the side, narrowly avoiding the blast of water. She then threw her hand up and guided the paper toward the man once again. He landed on the ground, but only momentarily as he felt something grab his leg. He noticed a long line of paper connected together from Conan's hand. Kept him from moving as the paper swarmed up his body like liquid, locking him in place. Damn. I wish I wasn't so weak at the moment. I would have been able to get out of this easily. I bet you're thinking that you could have gotten away from this had you been at your prime, Conan replied with a flat expression, but unfortunately for you, I know how you perform. I know all of your jutsu, and even have a proper way of defeating every single one. Her face remained flat while she spoke. The papers covered the shark man even further until his head was the only thing visible. While Nagato was always prepared, I was always one step ahead. I keep information on every Akatsuki just for the assurance that one would betray us at any point in time. I could counter them. Looks like it came in handy after all. Kisum growled in annoyance at the woman. He was basically useless at this point. You won't get anything out of me, so there's no reason to even try. I'm not spilling. Conan brought the man forward with her paper and stood him in front of her in his cocoon. She looked him in the eyes with a stone-cold gaze. I don't want anything from a tool like you. Your information means nothing to me since you're so blind. Kisum looked at her, never leaving her sight. It didn't help that it felt like she was staring into his soul with that piercing gaze. Her eyes were telling of the things she had seen and done. Kisum spoke. I bet you've never actually battled Madara before, have you? Battled him? Conan said out loud. He actually killed me at one point. To be honest, I don't even know why I am alive to even talk about it, but I do know that my life has a new purpose now. I should actually thank Madara for helping me rationalize my outlook on life. Life seemed so much more complicated before Naruto saved me from death's door. I've been given a second chance, and I don't intend to waste it. I will use it to the fullest of my potential, and serve the people for the preservation of humanity. Don't even lie to yourself, Kisum said with a grin. You know that you were forced to become a slave to Konoha after they picked you up. It was all a part of their plan from the get-go. The woman chuckled, defeated, and looked upon the man with cool eyes. Her violent gaze seemed to diminish as she looked down. It's kind of amazing thinking of how these days, my eyes have been opened more than they were just months ago. I used to think like you. I used to believe that the world couldn't be saved without sacrifice. I was wrong. Her eyes shifted over to Naruto, who looked cautiously but somewhat determined at her. I found someone who I can truly believe in. This new path that Naruto has opened up for me was given to me, and I should not waste it. I had the choice to remain alone or die, and yet I chose to stand by Naruto's side on his path to peace. I didn't entirely align myself with Konoha. I aligned myself with all of humankind. Kisame snorted as he looked down in contemplation. Konan was saying some things that were starting to make sense. It didn't entirely make sense, but her words held a lot of weight on them. It made him silently reflect upon Itachi. Your worst mistake was taking someone's words at face value, hoping that regardless of the destruction and the immoral repercussions of it all, that you wouldn't have to worry about this world anymore. Instead of trying to change it yourself, you believed in such a dark concept and drowned yourself in it. Dear Mincet was immature and selfish. You are a slave of your emotions and thoughts. Konan looked up into Kisame's eyes again. She could see the reflection of her words on his face. She honestly didn't believe that he would actually listen to her, but she was trying her hardest to get him to see this new way of life. She knew Kisame's past was troubled. The things that were mentioned about him through reports over the years helped with that conclusion. She knew he could be a valuable asset to the ninja in the upcoming war. She needed to try and sway others, even if they still choose the dark path. She must try. One of the best things that have ever happened to me was one moment after following Naruto, I found out something. I really don't have anyone to boss me around. No one is constantly looking over my shoulder or spying upon me anymore. I no longer have to worry about the stress of always being cautious or on the run, because I know that at the end of the day, I am free. I can make choices now. Believe it or not, you also have the ability to make the right choices. Your path has strayed, but it can always be fixed. Konan's eyebrows shifted into an arch as she continued, although, if you continue upon this path, the only future you have is death. I can't guarantee that Madara won't kill you after he is through with you. Your path to your so-called peace is nothing but disappointment. It won't last. But our goal is much larger than Madara's, and our goal will lead to peace. Kisame thought idly for a moment. Konan's change of character was unexpected. She seemed set on creating this peace through the shinobi world. Her view seemed clear to him, while he was more confusing than he originally remembered. Why was he even doing this again? He started thinking about his past. About the times where he killed comrades. He also thought about the times where people were genuinely his friend, only for him to kill them in the end. He also thought about the civil war in Kiri and how it affected everyone. He thought about Itachi and how the man always seemed to be deep in thought. A lot of his ideals were bouncing back through his mind. Many things Itachi mentioned were starting to fall in line with things that Konan was saying. It was strange, because the Uchiha always said them so cryptically, but maybe that was for his benefit. It was all starting to make sense to him. It was strange because momentarily, he truly believed that the world could be saved by these two. I have to be honest with you, Kisame started with a serious but forlorn look. I never really thought too much into this. Even now, I think some of the things that I was thinking about were truly just things to make me feel better. Although, I do have serious doubts about whether or not you can truly achieve these plans of yours. I will admit, Madara had me thoroughly convinced that I could actually have my future the way I wanted it. I don't know who to believe anymore. Konan noticed the defeated look that plastered upon his face, and she took this as a sign he's actually thinking about it. He may still have a chance. Her hands slowly let go of the papers that tightly wound around his body. His legs planted to the ground as he looked at her, puzzled. Her trust with him at this moment was unexpected. You seem quick to judge, Kisame said with a straight face. I have a feeling that we have reached an agreement, Konan replied stoically. The blue man laughed softly in resignation, in a sense, I suppose. He noticed as all of the other ninja there were still on guard regardless of Konan's unwinding of paper. Even he knew that he wouldn't last long here if tried anything funny right now. But after everything he heard today, he didn't want to put up any retaliation anymore. He lifted his hand to his mouth and coughed momentarily before a scroll appeared between his teeth. He lifted the scroll up for everyone to see before he threw it over to Konan. She caught it with no effort as the fishman spoke. This is my bargaining chip for my release. I don't want to fight, and I surrender for today. He walked past Konan as he went for the exit. They made brief eye contact in that passing, but more was spoken with their glances than was spoken all throughout their small battle. He jumped and disappeared into the ocean as the ninja watched him swim away. Their faces were more or less shocked at the instant deflation of the scuffle. Konan opened the scroll and saw that it was indeed the information that was written with vital information that could damage their chances of winning. Konan thought silently as she reflected on the recent conversation. So many things swam through her head and she didn't know that she was going to get through to him. She smiled softly at her accomplishment. She looked over to Naruto and saw him smile widely at her with all of his teeth for everyone to see. "Well done, Conan-san." Guy shouted in excitement, "You've managed to avoid casualties while gaining exactly what we needed from the spy. Lady Tsunade will be most impressed."
End of chapter 21.